time is illmatic, keep static like wool fabric.
Today's podcast, Britt and Zai podcast episode, I don't even know what the hell number it is because we've done so many, but none of them have been popping. But anyway, we're going to talk about the Harlem Renaissance and how some of the running themes still apply to today's environment, especially with the social movements that we see taking place at the current time. And I thought it was kind of really cool, all the parallels we can draw together. Right. You know, how do you feel about the topic, Brett?
Well, I was really excited when you brought the topic to me. So maybe give a little background of what sparked this idea.
A little background. So I was having a conversation about Jay-Z's recent 444 album, came out last year. Mm-hmm. And I was talking about it with my white coworker, and I'm kind of the mindset that it was like really time sensitive and it really came at a good time. And in my opinion, it's one of the more important albums to the culture in a while. And I say that because if any piece of work embodied what it means to be financially free and the definition of Black empowerment, like this was the album, like not only in content, but how it was distributed. I don't know if you know how it was, but Jay-Z released it on his own platform first, Tidal. Right. It goes platinum pretty much in a week. Mm-hmm. And then he releases it to the masses. So he's kind of showing and proving that he doesn't need the establishment for success, that he built something so strong he doesn't have to look for any handout or any help from an outside source. Yeah. And I just think that was super dope. So
yeah, definitely.
As I'm explaining this to my coworker, he's kind of just like, I'm like, what did you think about it? He was like, meh, like, man. Yeah. And he's just critiquing the album. Okay. And it doesn't have to be your best album, but it wasn't as important to him as it was to me.
Right.
You know, so that kind of spawned, I don't know, just an interest to see these times in history when we release something for the culture or whatever. Right. And just, I don't know. I've always been interested in the Harlem Renaissance. Yeah. So definitely. I just got curious, wanted to jump back because I think we're kind of in the same type of explosion as far as like content wise. And
right. And it's just good to look back and really see what took place because, you know, we really didn't learn much about it in school. Mm-hmm. We know the general, you know, one page in the social studies book. Pretty much.
So you guys gonna have to bear with us. This is our first time actually covering like a topic that we had to do research for. So we got to kind of give you a recap of the Harlem Renaissance in order to proceed with how it relates today. So pretty much if you don't know, the Harlem Renaissance was an intellectual, social, and artistic explosion that took place in Harlem and started in the 1920s.
And talk about how it wasn't just some boom, you know, just pow, all of a sudden all this happened.
Yeah. That was one of the more like interesting things that I found out is the way it was presented or the way I interpreted it growing up was that it was just happened. Right. It was a lot more deliberate and it was really orchestrated by, it was a couple people, but one of the most noteworthy people is W.B. Du Bois. Mm-hmm. And pretty much what happened was you had the narrative or the portrayal of Black people at the time was very stereotypical. It was nothing but blackface. Yeah. Nothing but racist imagery. Right. And to combat that, W.B. Du Bois actually commissioned artists to paint African Americans in a more give me the word, Britt.
I mean,
in a better light.
Well, humanize us.
Pretty much. Pretty much. This was an attempt to be humanized, to combat the hurtful imagery.
Right. And I mean, we're going to kind of bounce around, but it pretty much took place after an event labeled the Red Summer of 1919. Mm-hmm. which came from when we were, I guess, feeling ourselves a little bit too much for them. So they decided, to pretty much wage, I don't want to say an all-out war, but, there were a good amount of cities that had these, I don't know if I should call them race riots, but, pretty much they were going after Black people, lynching, women, men, and children. Mm-hmm. And it lasted, for that summer, and it was pretty bloody. So after that, that's kind of when W.E.B. Du Bois decided, we got to do something.
Mm-hmm. Well, what you had, that was like a contributing factor to the Great Migration. Mm-hmm. You had this period of time where Blacks were moving away from southern states, either for better opportunities because there were labor shortages in the northern factories, because this is around the time, this is World War One. So there was a lot of opportunity in the northern states for them to come and work. Mm-hmm. And they were actually recruiting Southern Black workers to fill the vacancies open. So in order to get more opportunity, right, and in order to escape the South, which was very violent at the time, I mean, it's no coincidence that at the same time the KKK mm-hmm. really rose and lynchings really rose, because not only do you have free Black people, which obviously pisses people off, even today, right. They are able to further themselves with this newfound freedom and build for themselves economically. So it's kind of like we had a chip on our shoulder, It's kind of like we're feeling ourselves, mm-hmm. This is our first opportunity to play catch up in America. Right. So,
and especially after, there were, I don't know the exact number, but there were a good amount of Blacks that served in World War One. Mm-hmm. Some of them had the motive of trying to show their patriotism, and that's why they went and fought overseas. But too, the Black people that went overseas, and saw how, good life can be, and they didn't deal with as much discrimination as they did back here in the States, they came back like, they're not they're not gonna settle for that bullshit. You're not gonna treat me like that, especially after I went over and fought for the country. So. Yeah.
It was funny because when I was like looking at documentaries, one of the songs that was playing, I don't know, it was like some old tune. It was like, how you going to keep them on the farm after they've seen Paris? Okay. So, so it's kind of like, how you going to treat them the same way after they went and lost lives and shed blood and for an America that really hasn't shown any value. Right. Like, it really hasn't shown that Black people have any value, Right. So the culture at the time, Black culture at the time, was just pretty much of just a newfound freedom, and kind of just like first time in our history, we kind of getting it together. And that's where you see the rise of Black Wall Street.
Real quick, I'm sorry. Did you see the movie Mudbound?
I didn't.
Oh, okay. Because it's that's kind of similar around that time. And the main character, he had went overseas and, was in the war and was, living a really nice life and didn't really want to come back. So when he came back, to the same old shit, it was just like, what the fuck?
Yeah. And it's like, you're not going to treat me the same way after I've shown my patriotism. Right. So we have a boom, kind of like we're surging in this environment, even though there's still bigotry, even though there's still violence, mm-hmm. we are still rising to the occasion and progressing as a culture, right. Contrarily, white culture at the time, whenever there is Black people furthering themselves, there's always kind of a resistance. Right. So our confidence, or our newfound freedom that gave us new Black confidence, mm-hmm. to the average racist white person at the time would be, we being some uppity Negroes. Right. And that's when you see the rise of the KKK. That's when you see the Black codes. That was racist legislation. So even though we're free, they tried mm-hmm. to limit the things we can have. So you have limitations on property ownership. Mm-hmm. You have the inception of labor unions. Labor unions were pretty racist in their inception. And if you didn't have that, you just had outright violence because
right.
it was just fucking niggas up.
Right.
You know?
Right.
But on the other side of that, white culture, and this is one of the themes, I think white culture always is dependent on black culture.
Right.
White culture at that time, there was some people that felt that it was too commercialized, mundane, and just phony, and just there was no thrill, there was no fun in life. It was just you go to work, da-da-da. Like, you had to see some of the stuff they were doing at the time. They were dancing all stiff and whatever it is. You know, if anything stays constant, black people know how to have a good time.
Right.
So this is when you have an idea of a first wave of white bohemianism. Just an unconventional lifestyle, a pursuit of pleasure, satisfying appetite instead of denying it, you know. Right. And blacks were fighting to be looked at as human.
Right.
But in the same token, they were still looked at as primitive. And it was almost the primitive side is what white people wanted to coin on. So they kind of looked to black culture and the things we could do as a I don't know, I can't even get it out. As a
just an outlet.
Way to do it. Yeah, just an outlet. Like pretty much just an outlet for it. You know?
And that's back to them coming to Harlem, you know.
Harlem was the spot to be so they can satisfy these appetites.
Right.
You know.
With their racist ass cotton club.
Right. Racist ass cotton club.
Club.
Interesting about the cotton club, black people couldn't get into it. They can only perform. They only perform and be just employees there.
Yeah.
Weren't there some stipulations of what was acceptable?
Yeah, it was pretty much you had to be, well, as far as the women, I guess, I don't know if they were dancers or what, but, you know, they were, they had to be at least 5'6", light-skinned, and under 21 years old. And the place was decorated as a stylish plantation environment. So, how great is that? And, you know, the workers were depicted as exotic savages or plantation residents. So, you know, let's make the cotton farms stylish nightclub. That's fucking assholes.
Kind of like holding on to the good old days.
Yeah,
you
right.
know? Right, bringing it back to the good old days. One of the quotes that I found in the research that I was doing kind of points to this, and it said, "So thousands of whites come to Harlem night after night, thinking that Negroes love to have them there, and firmly believe that Harlemites left their houses at sundown to sing and dance in cabarets because most of the whites only saw nothing but the cabarets, not the houses."
Right.
So it's kind of just like turning Harlem into like a tourist spot. And by Harlem, like, I think for this conversation's purpose, whenever we refer to Harlem, we're just referring to black culture, period. So it's like they're not looking at Harlem as a tourist spot. It's really just black culture, a place where they can indulge and just go back to the regular status quo. Because what you had, for as much as black and white culture were merging at the time, you still had these racist Jim Crow ideals of segregation. So the Cotton Club was no blacks allowed, you know, but the Savoy Ballroom around the corner had blacks and whites dancing together.
Right.
So if we can jump back just to the black confidence at the time.
Well, I was going to touch on
go
that.
Ahead,
will segue into that, but real quick back when, you know, they were orchestrating the Harlem Renaissance and getting these artists together and, you know, trying to, well, I don't want to go too far into it, but you know how the man,
Harmon. Okay, William Harmon.
Yeah, so just talk real quick about Harmon. I just want to talk about the struggle the artists were having.
Okay, so William Harmon was pretty much a investor, very wealthy white man who invested money into the black artists at the time. He hosted he started a William E. Harmon Foundation, And hold up, I'm just trying to get to my notes so I don't say anything wrong. Hold on. So he started the William E. Harmon Foundation, and it was pretty much a place where Black artists can showcase, because at the time Black artists weren't allowed to go to universities and didn't have the same opportunities to get noticed. Right. Knowing that there was a void in that, William E. Harmon stepped in and started the William E. Harmon Foundation, and this was the way to get people to recognize Black art. Mm-hmm. It's good to note that the William E. Harmon Foundation didn't consider themselves art authoritarians. They didn't critique the art itself. They just congregated the art together so people can come and look at it. Right. So they had like a hands-off approach. Here's the art. You guys make what it is.
They did offer like a prize award though, right?
Yeah, they did.
So
but
I guess that's kind of what motivated people to submit their art and to create. Mm-hmm. But, the Black artists at the time were really struggling with, what type of content to create. Mm-hmm. So it's like, is it too European? Is it too Black? Mm-hmm. They're really struggling, I guess basically to, do what's acceptable.
Yeah.
And, everybody, considering that we are Black, we never lived in Africa, it's always been kind of a struggle of doing what's inside of you. So some people are going to feel more connected to Africa and some people are not. It's really, personal to you. But some people, Elaine Locke being one of the main persons that I can think of, he was one of the artists pushing during that time, to really, everybody should be gathering their inspiration from Africa. Like, I don't want to see this cutesy little, we need some ethnic, tribal.
I don't want no landscape.
Right. And also, I guess it should be noted that none of the art sold that the Harmon Foundation put on display. And that's just mind-boggling, especially if you guys want to go and just look for yourselves and see the type of art they're creating is beautiful. And it's not like, a lot of times it was landscapes. So it's not like all of it looked Black. Even though a lot of the subject matters were Black, some of the stuff was literally landscapes, houses, nature, and people still didn't want to buy the art because there's still that, stigma with it that they don't want that, they don't want no Black art in their house. Yeah, but they did come out to look at it because it was a spectacle. Ooh, let's see what the Black people can do. Let's see what they can create.
Yeah, so, more about that, like you get this kind of conflicted artist because I don't know, to be an artist, period. I feel like a lot has to do with self-expression. So when you get to a point where people are dictating or you feel conflicted of expressing yourself freely or what you're expected to make,
right?
You're compromising the culture, or one can view that you're compromising the culture if you're not reaching back. Right. For traditional Black art, right. And you're doing a more European style. Mm-hmm. One can also say you're compromising the culture if you're not reaching inside yourself, or you're compromising yourself if you're not reaching inside yourself and just doing what you want.
Right.
And some of it could be like if you're doing a European style. On the flip side, if you're doing a European style of art or anything, are you doing it just to appeal to Europeans? Mm-hmm. Just to sell work. So it's kind of like, are you selling out? And I think Black people might be the only people that are really forced to ask themselves that question, or Black people in America.
Right, exactly, in America. Yeah, and I think that's just the struggle that is still going on with, am I Black enough? You know what I mean? That Black people in America always have to think of it. What I'm doing acceptable? We always have to make sure it's not, we don't have to, but I don't think we can help but to always keep the white audience in mind because that's just what we're surrounded by. Mm-hmm. And in all honesty, you know what I mean? Like that's within all of us here growing up in America, we have those both sides. We can't say, you know what I mean? I'm just strictly, all black, this and that. Like,
yeah, I asked you earlier last week. I said, do you think the biggest issue with African Americans that we face is that we don't embrace African American culture as a legitimate culture?
Right. And I think that now, especially with social media and all of us being able to connect more and share more ideas, I think that it's starting to become more legitimate. Mm-hmm. I think that we didn't have the confidence before, or I guess the validation is a better word, before that, you know what I mean? That we do have a culture. We're creating it.
Are we accepting it, though? I think that's one of
that's what I was saying. I think that now we're starting to accept it more just because we're able to get the validation and share our ideas more so with many people because of the internet. Because, yeah, like it was all stripped from us. And we're just taught that our culture is slavery. That's it.
Pretty much.
You know?
Pretty much.
So, yeah, that is a huge struggle that we deal with, you know, living here and having the history that we have.
Mm-hmm. And it's almost, it feels like with Black creativity, there almost has to be some aspect of white validation in order for it to catch. And it's like, does Black art always need a white audience to be considered legitimate? You know, what do you feel about that?
Like, I feel like in the past, yes. Mm-hmm. But now, just the way the world is now, no. I don't feel like, not so much anymore. No. If we're able to really start investing and putting our money together properly, then you could say, you know, fully, completely no. But like, you know, example, Black Panther, of course. As many Black people went out to support that movie, you know, it's like you didn't need the white audience, even though in the background it's still Marvel and white investors and things like that. So that's why it's like you can't fully say, you know.
Yeah. You can't, you kind of like you can't have one without the other.
Yeah.
There's always going to be.
That's what I was like, maybe eventually, but still present day right now. Yeah.
Yeah, you still do. Let's jump back since we're going to be all over the place. Black confidence and how it's always met with pushback. So before it was the KKK, back at this time, I would make an argument that right now it's probably the alt-right.
Well, yeah.
It's probably Trump and the Trumpettes. And,
the Trumpettes. Yes.
And you only get Trump and the Trumpettes after a Black man was president for 8 years.
Yeah.
So some examples of just being met with putback. I mean, nobody's really talking about it much anymore. I mean, you look at Colin Kaepernick and you look at the things he's doing. He's straight blackballed. Or more recently, LeBron and the Fox people. Yeah. The Fox lady, you heard about that, Laura Ingraham or whatever. Shouldn't even said her name. But, but, you know, you got them saying shut up and dribble to LeBron.
Right.
Because he's using his platform.
Exactly.
And I find it interesting because they'll shut down any minority or any Black person using their platform as a narrative.
Right.
Using their platform to push a narrative or to speak up for social matters.
Yeah, freedom of speech doesn't apply to us.
Yeah, but then at the same token, they'll turn around and do the dab on the evening news.
Exactly.
So it's always they picking and choosing what parts of the culture they want to acknowledge.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Or even Black Lives Matter. All lives matter.
Right.
Yeah, so it's always like just the pushback, and I think it's crazy. Like the things that aren't for them, they have to address. They have to say something about it.
They just always need to be the most important. You know, as soon as the light ain't shining on them.
Yeah. Like,
no, wait, no. Like, okay, relax. You always have the shine. Chill out.
Yeah, it's just like, it's crazy how the media will portray a Black teen wearing a hoodie as a thug, but that same Black teen wearing a hoodie doing a cool new dance will make its way, you know? Right. And it's like, we can only be acknowledged once they didn't control the narrative through minstrel shows,
right,
or whatever, is when they had a problem of the narrative we chose or we're choosing to display.
Right.
You know, it's kind of like they're just obsessed with our culture.
Pretty much.
I think that's well documented.
Right. Because, you know, that they had the story, you know, in a nice, neat little package. That's what it is. That's what it's going to be.
Yeah.
And now that, you know, especially with the Black Lives Matter movement, it's coming back into, you know, Black love, Black power. And it's in no way to shun anyone else. It's just that we need to uplift ourselves because of they started showing positive imagery, but if you look, you know, especially starting with like gangster rap and all that type of stuff, like there was a decline of our image. And of course we know that's just one side of it, but from the outside looking in, you know, that's all we are. Just, you know, we just all live in the hood, you know what I'm saying? And we're all violent. And, you know, that even those people that live in the hood and that are violent are still, you know, regular normal people. Yeah, so it's like we're getting back into, you know, expressing ourselves in a more beautiful manner. And nope, that's not okay. Why can't we have, you know what I mean, self-love?
It's either if we're not gangsters, we expected to be entertainers, or if we're not gangsters, we expected just to be quiet and don't cause no ruckus. You know, It was funny because I did a lot of my research for this topic while I was at work, and I do work with a whole bunch of white folk, and I'm looking over my shoulder, minimizing screens and stuff. Like I feel like I'm not even supposed to be reading. Like.
Yo, shut up.
Yeah, I feel like I'm not even supposed to be reading this. Like somebody go and tell on me or something. You know?
He's researching his history.
You know, Master ain't gonna let you see that. Don't let him see you reading and stuff.
You ain't supposed to know about the bullshit we used to do.
Right, straight up. So it's like, it's almost like it's like a double consciousness we have to live with. Like trying to stay real to ourselves, but also having to navigate a society that was built on discrimination against us.
Right.
Craziness.
Right.
Craziness. So we understand how powerful the controlling our own narrative is, and what we need to do. Why it's so important to have good representation. One of the reasons is the stereotypes, or if I go back, blackface loses its credibility when Black people are portraying themselves in a multifaceted way.
Right.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But what I found was funny, and kind of to dive off in another direction, is around the time where we started pushing our own narratives and the blackface minstrel show dies off is when Walt Disney gets his start around like 1927, and pretty much all he did was use imagery from minstrel shows as an inspiration for his characters. And so if you look at old Mickey Mouse, he has the black top hat. He's dressed in like slave formal wear, and he got those damn white gloves.
Right.
You know, and it is crazy how, minstrel shows, white people in blackface dies out, but it gets carried on through cartoons. You know, did you get it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they'll always find a way to, and I hate to keep saying they as like a blanket statement.
Them.
Yeah, those. The evil.
Those over there.
Right? But it's always like find a way to keep the same narrative alive. And in a more sinister way, I look at things because I'm super cynical. People who watch cartoons are generally kids. And if you are hiding this racist imagery in your cartoons, all you're doing is ensuring that same stereotype will live on through generations.
Right.
If that was on purpose, they diabolical.
Right.
You know, but I think it's so ingrained that I don't even know if everything if everything is so deliberate. Some things just happen on its own when it's so ingrained in the culture or so ingrained in society.
Right.
I don't know, to toot my own horn, I feel like white folk need us. I feel like culture would be so lame without us. I mean, I think Black culture is the most copied culture universally, let alone in America.
I have some friends that, I mean, I was born in Iowa. I grew up in, I don't even want to call it suburbs because it was damn near trailer park section of, Virginia. I mean, it was suburban, but it also had, its trailer park tendencies. No shade. That's what I grew up with. But I have some friends from back then still now, and they're complete Trump supporters, but they, listen to all this gangster rap. They always want to post hood shit and all that type of stuff. And then 2 seconds later, you're not going to take our guns. Trump this, Trump that. Like, pick one. And it's it's hard because it's like, because like, it's also, so it's like, oh, I know the few good Black people. So it's like, they know me and a few other people, whatever. So it's like, I know them and their families, and I know they're good people, but it's still like they put that veil over where it's like, like I don't count, or the other Black people they know don't count, and they can still feel this way about the whole race of people.
All right, yeah, listen, white folks, your one Black friend does not account for the entire Black race itself.
Well, I mean, just to even ignore it, though. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, so how are you talking all this shit? And it's like, what about, you love me and my family, but you can't talk all this racist shit against Black people and exclude me out of it. I'm part of that too.
I think the double consciousness, and I think we as Black people have to recognize this as well. And I think we talked about this yesterday before we recapped, is that there is a double consciousness inside of Black people living in America. But that also creates
many white people.
but I think there also is a double consciousness inside of white people as well. And we kind of neglect that. Like, as much as we're quick to point out certain behaviors that we exhibit as a culture as a direct correlation through slavery. And we don't actually understand that if we're affected by slavery, if we're affected by racism, white folks are affected by it too, and they might not acknowledge that they are.
Right.
But there's certain things that go hand in hand. So it's a double consciousness and feel. The fact that your white friends can scream pro-Trump, this, that, and the third, but then consider themselves progressive at the same time, kind of points to that. It points that there is this, like, I don't know, this caveat that some people have, or this, remember we were talking yesterday and my girlfriend brought this up to me, the mindset of how dangerous racism is, period, to everybody.
Right.
Like, we kind of always, since we are the ones affected, we believe the most, we always look at racism as just to be disruptive against Black people.
But also, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry to cut you off.
Go ahead.
But also, too, when you're growing up, always being taught that you're, the winner.
Yeah.
and
that is still something.
Yeah, you're always taught that you're the best, you're the winner, everything
you can do no wrong.
Your people have done is to benefit, the progression of America or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Whether you want to or not, you're always going to feel like you're better. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm saying? So,
it's ingrained.
Yeah, and I think now, too, especially with, so many people calling out white culture, calling out the white culture on their bullshit. And, because remember, I was saying this before, like how colonizing didn't used to sound like a bad word. Like that, they colonized this, they colonized that. Yeah, we colonized da-da-da-da-da. Now when you say it, it's like people really have the background and the definition really stuck in their head now because so many, you know, different cultures are calling them out on that shit. Now it sounds like a bad word if you call them a colonizer. Y'all fucking, yeah, like you are a colonizer now. I think too, that's what's starting to get to a lot of people is the fact that their history now, it doesn't look so good anymore. Yeah. And it's so much bad history that it's just like, fuck, like our people just yeah. So it's like that's not our fault.
Yo, you know what? I think it points, and I think it too, just like I think we're understanding more of the repercussions of colonization. Just as a society, period, white or black, we're starting to see, okay, this behavior down the line is problematic. So I think time has to pass as well. Like time has
definitely. But like we were saying too when we were talking about this before, like, you know, it's white people's job to reprogram themselves. Like we can't, nobody else can do that for them. You know, they have to relearn compassion and equality.
And let's put this out. It's not all white people.
No, of course not.
It's
but
not all
like,
white people.
But like we were saying, still, no matter what, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no matter what, there's something in there
within you. You know, just like some people have to work harder at getting rid of slave mentality than others. You know, but within all of us, it's still in the back of our minds. You know what I mean? That like what we were taught when we were younger, like that's just all that we were.
Yeah. You know? I don't know nothing. You know, you mentioned before, somebody at the school you work asked, who's your favorite African-American artist?
No, American artist.
American artist.
Mm-hmm. And I was like,
You don't know.
Because, you know, I always had like Monet, like as my favorite artist, but he's not American. So when he was like your favorite American artist, I was just like, let me get back to you. But after studying the Harlem Renaissance more in depth, like, you know, all the Black American artists that took place, you know, that contributed to that, you know, those definitely be on my list now. Like now I feel proud to have some American artists that I can say, you know, are inspiring or that, you know, I want to call my favorites.
And we wouldn't even know. We wouldn't.
No, we didn't learn that shit in art history. The fuck? That's why I was sleeping. Like, so dry as shit. Like, it's annoying. It's like, it's frustrating because as long as that class was, yo, like, oh my gosh. Like, you couldn't take one night to go over this?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, there's a lot of things. I think we're going to have to revisit a lot of topics that we didn't learn in school. And we're going to have to go out of our way to educate ourselves on the stuff they just bypass. I mean, you have a son. Right. I'm pretty sure you're taking some measures to incorporate some things they're leaving out of the curriculum, which is definitely everything.
And I think too, that's kind of why it's rough right now, because I also work in a school. It's rough right now trying to teach history, because I even see, like, my teacher that I work with, she's Italian. And I see her kind of dance around certain issues because she's always been interested in Black history and stuff like that, just from talking with her. She told me when she was a kid, she dressed up as Rosa Parks, like, because she's always, like, just admired her and everybody made fun of her. And she was just like, I'm going to be Rosa Parks. Like, fuck what y'all said.
All right, Kathy.
Right? Go ahead, girl. But I've seen her, too, like, kind of dance around certain topics because it's hard to talk about, you know, say, Columbus or Thanksgiving and things like that, because now information is so widespread. You know, it's kind of hard to just spread these lies now.
You can't sweep it under the rug anymore.
Yeah, because I know there was a kid in the classroom next door to me, and his mom would not let him participate in any type of, because his family's Native, would not let him participate in any type of Thanksgiving. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, rightfully so. It's bullshit.
Yeah,
and I don't even think we covered Columbus. Like, we just didn't even, because it was just like, nah. But I am proud to say that we just did a section on what country was that? The kids. Do you remember what country I told you? I'm mad I don't remember this right now. It wasn't Kenya, but shoot.
God, like, I don't remember, but I do remember you talking about it. Was it Ghana?
I think it was Ghana. And it was Ghana. You're right. It was Ghana. And, we went over the lesson, had the kids do a PowerPoint looking up different festivals in Ghana. I was like, I know that wasn't in the social studies book. Go ahead, girl. Like,
yeah.
So I appreciate, that. But yeah, like nowadays, just teaching the children, like you really got to do a lot of at home schooling. And, talking with them because, my mom gave me roots and like, it's like, thanks, but
I got Amistad.
Yeah. Like, it's like, thanks, but just from using, right. We didn't have the internet like we did now. You know what I'm saying? So our parents are just telling us what they know. So being able to research though, like there's no excuse now. To teach our children that, it's not just slavery isn't our beginning.
Yeah. And I think growing up and that being your only example of Black people in your history, has to affect us. It's affected me. Clearly it affects everybody if that's your only thing you can look through in your history. You know what I think? I think, along with 40 Acres and a Mule, I think all Black people should get my ancestry free. All Black people in America.
Really though, yeah, because I was just gonna say, like, especially growing up, like, in a predominantly white school, and when you cover slavery or any type of Black history, in quotations, Black history, and everybody turns and looks at you, and it's just like, oh my God. Or when they fucking come up to you, and the children, based off the ignorance of children, but when they come up to you and they're like, oh, what part of Africa are you from? It's like, how the did you not listen to the fucking lesson? But even still, like, sometimes, because it's not white people's experience. They don't think about this type of shit because it doesn't affect them. Like, even now, like, when I'm in school and with my teacher and stuff, and like they'll be going, like, I think we went over immigration, talk about Ellis Island, all that type of stuff, And she's Italian. She knows her mom and dad are Italian. They can trace their stuff back. They came in through Ellis Island. They have that, the fortune of that. So then it was kind of like having the kids fill out. And my class is 3rd grade, so they don't fully understand. And I also work with children that have autism. So they don't fully understand, you know what I mean? Yeah. About backgrounds and stuff. And, my son does. My son's not autistic, but my son does because I kind of, I tell him the bullshit. Yeah. But it was kind of like, yeah, so, write down, where's your family from? Da 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 da. And it's like, bitch, we can't really. We can't. What the fuck am I saying? DC? Like, we don't. Okay, yeah, but that's the thing. The kids were like, Texas. One kid was like, Canada. One boy just likes to say Canada. I don't even know if that's really, but it's like, yeah, everybody was just saying like local states and stuff, and the teacher was kind of looking like, but I'm looking like, that's all they fucking know. And I think she caught on the way I was looking, like, don't press them because they don't know unless you want to really get into a whole nother discussion right now. They cannot tell you their lineage. We don't have the fortune of that. It is so important. Yeah. So it's like, and then the kids too didn't even understand, like, you can say Africa, but they didn't get that, you know what I mean, necessarily. And it's sad, Yeah,
it's sad. It's real sad. I still don't know. Like, I have, I know my mother's family. My grandfather was from Louisiana, I believe. And my father's family is from Kingston.
Yeah.
Jamaica, Kingston, Jamaica. My father came here when he was like 13. I know nothing on my father's side. Right. Nothing at all on my father's side. And I have an Irish last name. Like, where the hell that come from?
Yeah.
I would like to know, Totally. Thank you, slavery.
Yeah, right.
But
I know.
I think it's so important that we do reach back from time to time and try to see what we can learn from the past and see if it presents itself the same way in the future. And I thought it was just doing all this research back to the Harlem Renaissance and Black culture. I thought it was crazy how some of the same shit that we look today, that we go through today, we're still asking ourselves the same questions. We're still fighting the same fight in one way or another. It was probably a lot more less dramatic now super psychological now.
Yeah. But I mean, no, we also have the different, sects within our culture. The people that you say act white or, too uppity. Then you have the hoteps who are super pro-black and yada yada. And it's like, if you've been to Africa and lived over there, okay. But even in Africa, I'm sure it's not just black and white. There's so many different countries. Like, there's no one way to be African. And I mean, especially now, given the Western culture, our culture, American culture has an influence all around the world now. Yeah, but, for sure. Like, people over here now, they're still like, when you try to connect to your African roots, it's almost like you feel like you're being phony because you don't really exactly know how to do it. You're just kind of going off what you see and what what you may know from a little bit of your research, but it's hard to like genuinely do it. And I have some African friends that get annoyed with Black people trying to, dress in, African garb or things like that. And I was talking with one of my friends, and I'm like, I don't remember what I said, but her point was why it upset her was because, and this is so true, being an African immigrant coming here and growing up here, they were made fun of so badly. Yes, African booty scratcher, yada yada yada. I've always been like enamored, just like fascinated with African people because I'm just like, oh my God, like, you know what I mean? Just meeting, especially like where I grew up, it was just, oh my God. I was so lucky to grow up there in Alexandria, Virginia. It was so many different immigrants from all over. Like, I met so many different people that I didn't even know existed. So, you had your Somalians, Ethiopians, Eritreans, you had your Liberians, your Kenyans. It was just like, so I got to see so many different types of African people. So me personally, I never felt discriminatory, to say those ignorant type of things. But I know plenty of people who acted that way. And that's that self-hate that we learn, you know what I mean? Yeah. Growing up in this country. So that's why it's like, I get it. But she was like, if you're genuinely trying to connect to the culture, I feel you. But don't be the person who was growing up talking all that shit. And all of a sudden now, because it's a fad and it's cool, you want to wear kente cloth and, the dashikis and stuff. Yeah. So it's like, I feel you. But I guess it's two different experiences. Like, me, but I'm American, it's kind of like, I'm glad that you're trying to connect. But, other people, I can understand why they would have a chip on their shoulder.
Yeah, I mean, you got to give people room to grow up as well. Yeah. Room to get more information and really start deciding. I wonder how many people who was running around saying African booty scratches were saying it just because they heard it.
No, absolutely.
Booty to a 8-year-old kid is funny regardless what context.
But then too, the problem was too the visualization of Africa that we had growing up was nothing but those fucking feed the children commercials.
The fly on their forehead.
That's all that we saw growing up. You know what I mean? Of Africa, that everybody was starving. So when you know what I'm saying? So that's kind of like, I don't know. I've always just been a more compassionate person. So I've never understood. Yeah, but I've never understood, making fun of someone. But I think too, because I moved around so much and I just saw so many types of people, I don't know what it's like.
I think you were always put in a place where you were the new girl at all times, so it's like not ruffling any feathers,
Yeah. But also too, I just felt sympathy because I was always, like you said, always the new girl. So I saw so many different situations. I don't know, never a dickhead.
There's a lot of them. I'm a dickhead sometimes. Sometimes you need to be a dickhead.
No, but not to where you're making fun of something that somebody can't control.
Yeah, of course. Goes without saying. All right. Well, bleep bleep. That's all, folks. Bleep 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 bleep. Nah. Thank you guys for tuning in for this week's episode of the podcast. We enjoy all the support. I hope you guys were able to follow along because we jumped every which way. And I think that's what makes it fun to talk freely and talk about these topics. There's no way we're going to fit everything in
Nope.
under an hour.
No.
So I hope we did a good enough job to get the conversation started on your end, you know?
Yeah, this is definitely a conversation starter because, like you said, we're jumping all over the place, but it's such a broad topic and it's something that, you know, we are all living right now. So we can definitely pick back up, you know, on another episode, elaborating more and getting more in depth about the Harlem Renaissance because there is a lot of stuff that we left out. But like you said, hopefully, you know, it sparks your interest to want to research on your own. There's a few really good documentaries that we can post links to at the bottom. That's a good starting point. That'll really open up your eyes and, you know, maybe motivate you to keep on researching.
Yeah, and have you draw your own conclusions.
Right.
See the parallels for yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
All
well,
right.
I got to get out of here. It's Easter Sunday. I'm about to eat good.
I'm on a diet, so fuck you.
Fuck that.
Listen, about to be summertime sexy.
Yeah, right. All right, Britt.
All right, man.
Till next time.
Yep.
Time is illmatic, keep static like wool fabric. Once again. Time is illmatic, keep static like wool fabric. Pack a formatic to crack your whole cabbage.
The real son, count this money, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Hey yo, put the grants over there and say
Time is illmatic, keep static like wool fabric.